Hello everyone and welcome to Memory Flow, where we discuss fragrance and fragrance collecting, and today I am finally going to talk to you about my favorite scent from the male line of Guerlain, which is Heritage. So this is a video I wanted to do for quite some time now, but I just waited for a special package to be delivered to me. And this is my latest purchase from Guerlain, and this is a vintage, well, if you consider 1992 vintage, this is an original launch year eau de toilette Heritage de Guerlain, which also contains, if the camera can reveal it, also contains engraved the signature of Jean-Paul Guerlain and the year 1992. This was launched in 1992, as I just said, just a few years after Samsara, and it represents Jean-Paul Guerlain's last major project. This is not by any means Jean-Paul Guerlain's last fragrance. He also worked on the two Arsène Lupins. There's also Guerlain, and there's quite a few Aqua Allegorias. But it's just the last Guerlain major release before it got taken over by the group LVMH, after which shortly there comes a period of interregnum, as I like to call it, where all the fragrances of the house were worked on by other perfumers such as Sylvain Delacour, Béatrice Piquet, Maurice Roussel, until the time that Thierry Vasset finally became the in-house perfumer, the master perfumer at Guerlain. So the inspiration for this fragrance, and not just for the bottle, was Foucault's pendulum. And I've read this on Guerlain's official website because I wouldn't have known it otherwise. And Foucault's pendulum is quite interesting in this association, because Léon Foucault was a 19th century from the 1800s 19th century scientist who developed this pendulum, which is a free moving pendulum, which is currently on display. A replica of it, I think, is currently on display in Paris at the Pantheon. He developed this pendulum in order to demonstrate the rotation of the Earth. And what's interesting about this particular association, not just in terms of design language, because of course this is supposed to be the pendulum and the lines and everything is just supposed to direct you to thinking towards that, but also remember, you can also view Foucault's pendulum as a system of reference, and I will link you a very interesting video on this matter, because if you regard the pendulum itself as a non-moving object, when it is in fact moving, you can actually see the Earth rotating. And just like Heritage de Guerlain, which was called Le Parfum Intergénérationnel, the intergenerational fragrance, this is true because this Heritage, this was a system of reference for the house, and it continues to be in terms of not only their masculines. And this is another reason that I am absolutely in love with this fragrance. So the bottle, the original bottle, not this one, and not this one either, mind you, because this was a limited edition. I will post a picture of the original bottle. I hope I find one. And I also have this miniature, which is very cute and very interesting. It contains the eau de toilette as well. The bottle was a design of Robert Guerlain. So another interesting thing about Heritage is that this is the first time where the Guerlain, the famous accord, is finally mentioned officially. Well, of course, the Guerlain is that accord that kind of ties together all Guerlains from the very beginning. So again, this is kind of the reason why this is called Heritage. Another thing about this one is this was the first masculine from Guerlain which was launched in both EDT and EDP simultaneously, which is of course a huge deal because now men could choose their favorite concentration, a feature that was previously reserved only to women. And this is such, now imagine launching a fragrance today, a masculine fragrance, a fragrance marketed towards men, because fragrance has no gender. Imagine doing this, marketing a fragrance towards men that nowadays doesn't have an EDP concentration. Madness, you couldn't do that today. So yeah, think about it. And this also marks a moment where fragrances from now on, masculine fragrances, tend to begin to have a little more heft towards the base. They're not just your freshies and your fougères and you kind of have a change going on now. So let's see what Heritage is all about. So this gets described as having an aromatic freshness, a spicy amber, and an oriental woodiness or a woodsiness, which would be more appropriate, and nothing could be more true. The notes are extensive, and they are lavender, juniper, sage, bergamot, carnation, pepper, coriander, rose, Irish jasmine, amber, sandalwood, patchouli, musk, cedarwood, and oak moss. Now this is such a clean fragrance, this is so proper and dapper. This is for someone who is groomed to perfection and wears just the most perfectly tailored suit. Now I love the fact that this fragrance has this huge list of ingredients, and I do miss these types of fragrances. This is such a complex beast, and we can also, even though this is very complex, there's still some aspects you can kind of devise from it, and here are some of the aspects. This is fresh, aromatic. This comes from the lavender, the juniper, the sage, and the bergamot also. This is not very citrusy, but it does have that citrusy feel to it. And this kind of classifies it as an old school, very classy, but kind of old school, you know. Also, another aspect is a spicy one. This comes from the coriander, pepper, and the carnation. And this comes off as warm and very invigorating. And this is probably where that barber-shoppy feel, this is where it comes from. Also, the most important aspect I think this has is the earthy and woodsy aspect, which comes of course from the patchouli, the sandalwood, the oak moss, that heavy base, and the cedarwood. this makes it so in Heritage, this has a rugged mahogany feeling of most precious wood. Very heavy and very distinguished, very classy. As I said, this is for someone that's been groomed to perfection. And last but not least, an ambery aspect, which is of course vanillic and quite powdery, especially in the newer formulation. The older formulation tends to be a little less powdery, but this is neither from here nor there. This is neither here nor there. It's just a matter of preference. So of course Heritage is way more than the sum of its parts, and because this also has this creamy aspect from the sandalwood and also delicious patchouli and that powdery vanilla, which is just yum. Now I've always preferred the EDP, and this is why I've previously owned the EDP until I finally found this one. There are some differences between the two, but they are not major. The EDT, of course, the EDT is fresher, more aromatic, and also spicier, while the EDP is more ambery, more tonka, and just creamier. All around. Of course, the differences between the new and the vintage are not much, but they do exist when you compare them side by side. So the vintage is more on the woody side. I think it's because of the sandalwood. The sandalwood is just darker and more luxurious. Also, I do believe that the newer formulation is a bit more towards the unisex feeling. I mean, the newer formulation could very easily be worn by a woman, which of course it's true for this one, but I think not as much. Which of course, I mean, I still like the EDP, the current formulation, very, very much, and I do consider it quite a remarkable fragrance even today. So how about the evolution of Heritage? So Heritage has a very complex evolution. It's almost like a trip in itself on the skin. This goes from a somewhat harsh barbershoppy opening to an aromatic woody, and then to a spicy amber with a patchouli and sandalwood to just die for. They're so good in the dry down, and Heritage is all about the dry down. You have to experience Heritage's dry down in order to understand it, to properly get to know it. And this is why Heritage is the perfect example why you should not judge a perfume or a fragrance by its opening, because there's so much more going on than just that opening. Also, performance. Now, Heritage has very nice staying power on the skin. It surpasses the 8-hour mark with that delicious vanillic ambery dry down. Of course, this has very decent sillage. It can make itself heard without, even though it doesn't fill a room. Now, in terms of price, Heritage can be found discounted online for about 50 to 60 euros, which is great. The price is just great for what this fragrance has to offer. So another way to look at Heritage is to analyze its roots when it comes to its scent. So the tagline for Heritage, as I said, was Le Parfum Intergénérationnel, and this makes it a very special fragrance along with its name, Heritage, right? So this is special because you can feel other echoes from other major Guerlains in Heritage, and Heritage is sort of like the bow that ties it all together. So in this I get echoes of Jiki with its aromatic lavender. There's also echoes from Habit Rouge with its freshness and barbershoppy sharpness. There's also a good part of Shalimar in that amber and that very typical vanilla. And also I feel some of that samsara, of course, because of that sandalwood, which is just gorgeous in Heritage. So what's interesting to me in this is that I do get some future glimpses of a fragrance that did not exist back then when Heritage was being launched. It would be a future success of the house, and this is the great L'Instant de Guerlain pour Homme. And this is because of that patchouli, which, of course, the patchouli is just amazing in Heritage, especially in the dry down where it becomes just so rich. But this patchouli will become even more amazing in L'Instant de Guerlain pour Homme. But there's this is the seed, this is where it all began, I think. This is the inspiration, I guess. So there you have it, this intergenerational fragrance. This is so crazy. It goes to the future, it goes into the past. This is so good. It still remains such a huge colossus of a fragrance for this house. And this is a fragrance that I could talk about for hours, because this is so remarkable, and it just although this has inspired quite a few scents in its time, it always kept its uniqueness, and this has the potential of becoming someone's only fragrance because it's so versatile and so complete. So, as usual, I am very curious to hear about your relationship with this fragrance. So do tell me about this in the comments, and until next time, remember, fragrance creates memories, and may yours be happy.